أيها المشتاق لا تنمي هذه أنوار ذي سلمي عن قليل أنت في الحرم عند خير العرب والعجم قف أمام القابر بالأدب
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الفاتحة من التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى على ما نوى نبينا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ما نوى سلفنا صالحا المؤلف أبي أحمد نجم حمشي الله أحمد سبحانه الحمد لله في أعمالهم وأخلاقنا في أخلاقهم وطريقتنا في طريقتهم القبول وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. بسر الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين آمين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So inshallah this week we're carrying on with Risalah al-Jamiah and completing the rest of the integrals or the furud of the ablution inshallah. Okay, so just a quick recap of last week's session. Okay, so the first integral we covered was the intention, right? So we first of all, the intention is made at the sunnah position of making the intention is when you start washing the face. Yeah, so the intention is wajib, the first one. Second is the washing of the face. Okay, washing of the face, the length and the width, the whole of the face, right? Lengthwise from the hairline where the hair starts to grow until the bottom of the chin, right? And width-wise from ear, this bone called the tragus here, the one that covers the ear canal, right? This bone until the other side, right? Width-wise. Okay, so everything within those parameters is obligatory to wash, is wajib to wash, and also there is an obligation to exceed the limit, the hairline by a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 fingers length, right? Because that way we are certain that we've covered everything that is considered to be part of the face. Okay, there's also, in part also there is hence the sunnah also of washing the ears together with the face. Okay, because some of the scholars say that consider the ears to be part of the face. Okay, so for the Shafi'is, for us it is sunnah to wash the ears together with the face 3 times. Okay, of course the sunnah of 3, sunnah of repeating 3 times holds for all the actions of the wudu. Okay, generally it's a general sunnah. Okay, and it comes out in many different actions. Okay, so lengthwise, widthwise, obligation, and we have to wash all 20 face hairs, right, have to be washed. So every part of the face, right, zahir and batin, the external and the skin, right, has to be washed, right, including all 20 face hairs, except for 2 of the face hairs, right, which we've shown in this slide from last week, right, which are normally we call it the beard. So basically these 2 that go down the jawline, this is one, and this is the other one. and the hair that comes out from the chin. So this whole thing, if this is thick, right, then this we're not required to wash the insides of it, because it's difficult to get water inside, right? So all we have to do is just wipe the outside. Okay, and what does it mean for this to be thick? It means that if you're sitting across someone who has a thick beard, right, when you're sitting within a range of about 1.3 to 1.5 meters to this person, right, maybe three arms length maybe also, right, when you speak to this person when you're sitting with this person from this range, right, not up close, right, from this distance, you are not able to see the skin inside the beard. You're not able to see the color of his skin, right, behind the beard. So that's when that's the case, then that beard is considered a thick beard. Okay, and therefore it is not wajib to wash the inside, right, to get the water to get into the skin. Okay, so that's the only exception. Okay, other than that, if there are any growths on the face, coming out of the face, that should be washed as well. Any holes, blisters, or anything extra, right? In fact, if there's an extra face also, right? Maybe if there's one face, because face is the word is involved is wajah, which means the countenance, okay, with which we encounter other people, with which we face other people. Therefore, the face, if one has two faces, one facing forward and one backwards, then the face facing forward, with which we interact with people, that is the one that is obligatory to be washed. And if somebody happens to have two heads, right, therefore two faces, and both facing forward, then at least one of the two faces must be washed. Okay, so these examples are meant to clarify the obligation of washing the face. Okay, so that was what we did. That's where we're up to now. Okay, the internal parts of the face are not wajib, right? The nose, internal parts of the nose, and the eyes, and the lips inside, all these are not wajib, but maybe sunnah. Okay. Okay, although with the eyes there's a difference of opinion also whether it's actually sunnah or not, in the insides of the eyes, I mean. Okay. Okay, so this week, inshallah, we'll continue to where Habib Ahmad bin Zain carries on. Wa anqar radiyallahu anhu, min furud al-wudu, from the obligatory integrals of the ablution. Right. Wa anqar radiyallahu anhu, nafa'ana Allahu bihi wa bi'ulumihi wa bi'ulumi shaykhina fi ad-darain, amin. الثالث غسل اليدين إلى المرفقين. والرابع مسح شيء من بشرة الرأس أو شعر في حده. Okay. Also الخامس غسل الرجلين مع الكعبين. والسادس الترتيب على هذه الكيفية. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover inshallah today. Right. So after the intention, which is wajib, the first integral. The second integral is the washing of the face according to the conditions that I've set out last week. Okay, that we clarified last week. Third is washing both hands. Okay, when we say hands, in this sense, it refers to the hand, meaning from the tips of the fingers all the way until the elbow. Okay, and beyond, to include the elbow. Yeah. Okay, and also the wiping a part of the head. Okay, the hair of the head. Okay, within the limits of the head, which I'll get to in shortly. Right. Fifth is to wash the feet until and including up to and including the ankles, right, and a little bit beyond that, right. And sixth is the tertib, which is the proper sequence, proper order as set out in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, washing of the hands. Okay, in in the context of wudu, when we refer to the hands, right, when it referred to the hands in the Quran, فَغْزِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. Okay, so the hands include everything up to the elbows, right, and include the elbows, in fact. See, that's what is intended by the washing of the obligatory washing of the hands in the wudu. Okay, for the purposes of the water reaching our skin, right, it is obligatory to remove anything other than dried perspiration, right, that prevents water from reaching the skin. Okay, dried perspiration counts as part of our skin because it is because if you touch, if someone were to touch his, if I was to touch my wife, for example, right, and she had some dried perspiration, dried sweat on her skin, right, and if I touch that part of her skin, my ablution would be nullified. Okay, so based on that, the ulama, based on that, this dried perspiration does not count as other than the skin. Okay, so it's not something that prevents water reaching the skin. Okay, so with regards to the hands, it's also wajib, right, it's obligatory to wash from the fingertips, right, all the way until the elbows. Yeah, so this part of this is the whole elbow. To wash the whole elbow, and the only way for us to be certain that we've washed the whole elbow is to then go a little bit beyond. Yeah. Okay, so this is wajib. Okay, and to go beyond that going beyond, this is called tahjil, right, the part beyond the elbow, right, for when we go beyond the elbows, and also when we go beyond the ankles a little bit, right. This practice is called tahjil. Okay, and this tahjil is wajib, right, because of the principle that I mentioned last week, right, whatever is requisite, right, or necessary to the sound complete discharging or performance of an obligation is also obligatory. Okay, so that without which an obligation cannot be carried out, that thing is also then becomes, by virtue of that, becomes something that is obligatory. Okay, meaning, for example, in this sense, right, when we want to wash, we want to fulfill the obligation of washing our hands up to our elbows, right, and to ensure that we fulfill that requirement, that we've washed our elbows fully, the only way to do that is to wash a little bit beyond the elbows. Yeah, otherwise, unless, I mean, if it was even if there was a line, a dotted line that came along, it would still be a bit risky. So the only way is to wash beyond the elbows. That way we are certain that there is no doubt that we have fulfilled the obligation. And it also, in fact, because that is what allows us certainty, that is what makes us sure that we fulfill the obligation, then doing that itself becomes an obligation. So the tahjil becomes an obligation. Okay, and as a matter of fact, it is then sunnah to wash even beyond that a little bit more. Okay, to move closer up towards the shoulder. So beyond the tahjil, a little bit extra, that is sunnah. The tahjil itself, i.e. the washing beyond the elbow or the washing slightly beyond the ankles, that is wajib. Yeah, because of that principle. Ma la yatimul wajib illa bihi fahuwa wajib. Okay, and the bit of extra that I mentioned earlier, the 1 or 2 fingers, right, on the face, right, that is called the ghurra. Okay, the bit of extra that fulfills the obligation of meeting the limit of the hairline, right, or between from ear to ear. Okay, the extra that fulfills the requirement or fulfills the obligation, right, that for the face is called ghurra, and for the hands and for the ankles it's called tahjil. So this ghurra and tahjil are important. They are, the distinguishing features of the Prophet of the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on Judgment Day, because from the Ummah will be distinguished, right, by the light of the wudu that shines from this ghurra and tahjil. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, on the day of resurrections, my followers, my ummah will be called al-ghurra al-muhajjalun, right, from the traces of ablution. And whoever can increase the area of his radiance should do so. Okay, so hence the sunnah of going beyond the tahjil, right, to go beyond the obligatory wash. Okay, and in fact he is sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is called the qa'id al-ghurr al-muhajjalin, right? So he is the leader of the al-ghurr al-muhajjalun. Okay, because he will be, of course, the one with the most radiant on that day, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and in fact this ghurr al-muhajjalun are actually initially I think that the reference is taken from horses. So if you look at horses, right, there are these horses, they have some marks that are considered beautiful, where they have the white marks on the face, right, and white marks up to on their feet. Yeah. So these terms, the ghurr, right, and the ghurr and the tahjil, are essentially taken from the beauty of the horses. The reference was taken from there. Okay, so the ghurra refers to the light, the radiance that are on the faces of the Muslims, right, because of the extra washing and the wudu, of course, in the course of the wudu. And the tahjil, right, al-muhajjal is the radiance from their sides. So the radiance, that the light, the nur from the legs and from their hands, their arms. Okay, sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Okay, the obligation to remove anything other than dried perspiration, right, includes everything else, right, anything else that blocks water from the skin, right, like wax, right, or fingernail polish, that's not, that doesn't come off, that blocks, that is a barrier. Okay, and thick moisturizer. So if you're using moisturizer and it's very thick to the extent that the water does not get through to the skin, and then that's a problem. Right? Although generally moisturizers, if applied a thin layer, shouldn't really be a problem. Right? Similarly, ointments, right, or medication, right. So anything that forms a thick layer over the skin, right, does not allow for the water to touch the skin, right, that these are problematic. Okay, pen marks, for example, right, are okay. Yeah, because pen marks they do not constitute or are not constituted as bodies. Okay, a body or a germ, a mass, a substance, right, is something that if you scratch, it will come off. Some bit of it will come off. Okay, so for example, if you think of henna, okay, so henna, when it's that wet, the paste is still on the skin. If you scratch that bit, right, then that part will come off. So if that part is there, that part is considered to block the water from the skin. But once the paste itself, right, comes off, and what's left is the mark on the hand, for example, the design on the hand. So that, if you scrape it off, it won't come off, right? So that's just a stain or an athar, a trace of the henna. So that is okay. Okay, so that does not in fact impede water, block water from getting through to the skin, and because of that, it's permissible, right? And similarly, because of that, also are pen marks or marker marks. Yeah. As long as there's not an impediment in the form of a body, right, which when scraped or when shaken up, it comes off. Okay. Okay, so in washing the hand, the water must flow to reach everything that is on the hand, every part of skin and everything else that's on the hand. For if there are extra fingers have to be washed, or bits of flesh sticking out, those also have to be washed, and open wounds not covered by skin. Okay, so for example, if if you have a blister, for example, on the hand, right? There's a blister on the hand, right? But as long as that blister is the layer of skin that's over the blister, okay, is still intact, then it suffices to wash over that skin. But once the layer above the skin, right, the second layer, the layer, the thin layer of skin above, right, in which there's the liquid, okay, once that layer of skin is burst or is punctured, right, then it's wajib, it becomes obligatory to wash inside of that. Okay. So similarly with any other wounds that involve an additional layer of skin, right? If the layer of skin on top is still intact, right, then it suffices to wash above that layer of skin. But once there's a hole, once there's a puncture, you can get through to the layer of skin inside, then it becomes obligatory to wash inside as well. Okay, the water must reach the inside. Okay, of course, if it is an open wound and if washing it, will cause harm or will delay healing, then it is permissible to do tayammum, right, for that limb of wudu. Okay, and if somebody happens to be an amputee, right, if the hand is cut, for example, right, cut to the wrist, okay, then it is wajib still to wash from the wrist until the elbow. Okay, so if the wrist is cut off, then it's wajib to wash from the wrist until the elbow. But if the elbow is cut off, then it's only sunnah to wash just a bit around the elbow. Okay, so that sunnah remains, right? But the wajib of washing the hand, right, is no more. Okay, because everything up to the elbow is gone. So all that's left is the sunnah of washing the elbow and a bit above. Okay, so that's with regards the washing of the hands until the elbows. Okay, warabi' mashu shay'in min basharati ar-ra's aw sha'rin fi haddihi. Okay, so we have to wipe part of the skin of the head or hair within its limits. Okay, so here, why wiping? It's not washing, it's not the same as the earlier or the other limbs. Okay, because the verse in the Quran says, right, faghsilu wamsahu bi ru'usikum, right, to wipe a portion of your head. Okay, so it would suffice to place a clean wet towel on the head, right, so that a few hairs, so that a part of the head is washed. Okay, so after you wash your hands, you've washed both hands, right hand and left hand, and then we're going to wash our head, right? It's enough even to place a wet clean towel on the head, or suddenly while you're washing outside, right, a raindrop falls on the head, right, and then you intend by that the washing of the head, that suffices. Okay, so in fact it suffices to wash even part of one hair, okay, on the head. Okay, but it must fulfill this condition, which is the hair on the head must be within the limits of the head. So what do we mean by that? So if, for example, I have long hair, or a woman has long hair, right, and it comes down to here, for example, right, and I want to wash only the tips of the bit of hair, right, so that will not count as the washing of the head, right, because the hair, if pulled out from the top of the head, the part that has to be washed is that which does not exceed the hairline, does not exceed the limit of the head. For example, whether the back, right, where the hair starts to grow at the back of the neck normally, or the front or the sides. Okay, but if it goes beyond the limit of the head, the hair that has to be washed has to be within the limits of the head, right, not that which falls outside of the limits of the head. Okay, so it's not permissible for a woman washing long hair to wash, for wudu, only the tips of the ends of her hair. Okay, it will suffice also if someone were to accidentally pour water on one's head, right? And we safely, the safest way would be for that person to then intend the washing of the hair, right, where that water falls onto the head, right? Although not all scholars, some scholars say it suffices to have the initial intention, right, whether beginning with the hands or at the face, right? Okay, but it would be safer to make the intention to be present, to presence your intention when the water comes into the head, so that definitely counts, without the outside of difference of opinion, and that definitely counts as washing of the head. Okay, so now with regards to the face and the head, right, around the washing of the face and of the head, right, the ears are washed as a sunnah. Okay, I won't be going into the sunnahs now. I want to complete the furud first as per the text. Then maybe inshallah next week, we'll go into the sunnah actions, recommended actions of the wudu, and the makruhat, the disliked actions, right? And maybe the conditions of validity of the wudu and of the major ritual bath as well. Okay, but the ears are important because in fact throughout the sunnah, if you count the sunnahs of washing the ears throughout the whole of the wudu, they come up to about 15 times. So 15 washings of the ears. So from there, there's clearly an emphasis on the ears, right, in the wudu. So when we wash our faces, right, as I mentioned earlier, we wash our faces as a sunnah of 3. So you wash our faces together with our ears 3 times. So the ears are washed 3 times with the face, right? And then after that, when you wash the head also, right, it's sunnah 2. So the sunnah of washing the head quickly, right, be to take the wudu, take the water with your hands, to put your fingers, your thumbs into where the tragus is, into the ear canal, right, and to rub the hand back all the way to the back of the limit of the hair at the back, and then bring it back front like that once, and then to wash the ears, right? So that makes one set. So to do that 3 times would be the sunnah, right? So that's 3 washings of the ears, once like that, another time, okay, and three times, right? So that's 6 together with the face, and then that's the head together with the head, yeah, 3 times together with the face, 3 times together with the head, right? And then 3 times after that, just the ears alone, so we take water, right, we run the fingers through the canals while we clean the back with our thumbs. Okay, so 3 sets of that. That's another 3, so that's 9, right? And then once, just the pointer fingers, index fingers, water to clean the ear canals 3 times, right? And then 3 more times with the palms. Okay, so we take fresh water like that once, right, twice, and 3 times. So that's 3, 3, 3, 3, and 3. So 15 times altogether. Yeah, washing the ears, right? So why so many times washing the ears? Because the ears are receptacles of the ears are the limbs that are most implicated or most guilty in cutting off our relation with Allah, our link with Allah, through the sins that come in through the ears. Okay. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Yeah. So that's one of the sunnahs, which I will repeat inshallah when we do the sunnahs. Okay, so we've done the hands, we've done the head, washing of the head. Okay, so al-khamis, ghasl al-rijlain ma'al ka'bayn, washing the 2 feet up to and including the ankles. Right, wasadis, and lastly is the tartib. Okay, meaning the intention, and then the face, and then the hands, and then the head, and then the feet, and then this order, right, in that order. Okay. Then I'll provide some scenarios to clarify the issue of or the order of wudu, inshallah. Okay, so the washing of the 2 feet up to and including the ankles, as I mentioned earlier, this is called tahjil. Okay, the part of including and exceeding the ankle slightly is called tahjil. Yeah. So it's important that with regards to the feet, right, especially same with the hands, as I mentioned about the blisters. Okay, so if there is anything that an additional layer of skin over a wound, for example, right, then that layer of skin has to be washed, right? But if that layer of skin is punctured, or it's an open wound, then that whole part has to be washed. Okay, all of that skin has to be washed. Okay, so this is very common, especially even more. Blisters are more common even on the feet. Yeah, blisters or corns and calluses on the soles of our feet. Yeah. So this is very important to pay attention to, because of course there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Wailun lil aqab, yeah, minan nar." So asbighul wudu, right? Be careful, right, of the threat of the threat of the fire, right, to the heels, right? The heels basically take care, protect your heels, from the fire. Okay, and perform your ablution thoroughly, properly, okay, completely. Or kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah. So there's a specific reminder, right, and emphasis from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because our heels, tend to, especially for men, right, the backs of our heels, right, tend to be dry, right, and especially when it's dry and the grooves or the splits, right, in the skin are deep, and it's very risky, because we have to pay close attention to those the gaps, in our skin, right, to make sure that water reaches all the way in. Okay, and in fact it is a sunnah to be especially careful, right, to pay close attention to the feet, right, to the heels. Okay, because of this, from this hadith, right, the command that comes from this hadith, right, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so everything that's on the feet, right, including gaps, splits, cuts, growths, etc., have to be washed thoroughly. If, for example, the ankle is cut off, okay, so if the ankle is cut off, then there is no more obligation, right, to wash the foot. Okay, it is sunnah to wash what remains, and with a little bit of extra. Same with the elbow, the hand that was cut at the elbow earlier, as I mentioned. Right, so similarly, if there's somebody's foot is cut off at the ankle, right, then the obligation to wash the foot is no more, but the sunnah of washing that what remains and a bit, that the sunnah remains. Okay, it's still sunnah to wash that part. Okay, for the person who has no ankle, okay, if for example we met somebody who doesn't have an ankle, right, then that person the obligation is for that person to wash to the point where an ankle would normally be, right, under normal circumstances. Okay, in a person with a normal body, okay, physically, right, then that person is obliged to wash to that point. Okay. Okay, so generally the texts are quite specific, right, in specifying what the elbows are and what the ankles are. Okay, but I think it's apparent enough, right, for us. The elbows being the meeting of the joints, right, of the shoulder and the forearm, right, where they meet, that's called the elbow. So that the whole joint there, okay, is the elbow. And similarly for the ankles, right, where the shin bones meet the foot, yeah, and obviously they're quite obvious, right, the elbows and the ankles. So inshallah shouldn't be a problem. Okay, now with regards tertib, okay, or the performing all these actions in this order. Okay, so as intention, face, hands, hair, right, face, hands, head, and then feet. Okay, so this requirement basically means that we put first things first, right? In following the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay, which both of which have commanded us clearly to follow a certain order. Okay, and if we go against the tertib, then whichever limb of wudu or whichever element or whichever integral is not in its place is invalid. Okay, so for example, if Zaid washes his hands before washing his face, his hands, i.e., his hands all the way up to the elbow, the obligatory wash, yeah, before washing his face, if he does that, then his hands are not counted as part of the wudu, right? That washing is not counted as part of the wudu, but his face rather is. Okay, so there are a few scenarios, right, which I'll go through quickly just to clarify this requirement, okay, of performing these actions in a sequence, in a certain order. Okay, there's one scenario in which tertib, right, or the following of the sequence is not required. Okay, so this is when one submerges in water completely. So the whole body is submerged in water, even for a moment. Okay, and he intends thereby he intends by ablution or wudu. Okay, so in this situation, in this scenario, then the requirement of tertib falls away, right? Because everything is submerged at the same time. Okay, so now the scholars have a difference of opinion. Some scholars say that the wudu, occurs in an instant. Okay, means everything is washed at the same time when one is underwater as such, right? And there's other scholars say that it is they prefer that one should then be underwater, right, sufficiently long enough to intend face, you're washing your face, your hands, your head, your feet, right? So like face, hands, head, feet, right, and then come out of the water. Okay, something like that. Okay, so one should stay slightly longer than a moment, right, enough to intend the washing of the limbs of the ablution. Okay, the integrals of the ablution, the obligatory limbs of the ablution, sorry. Okay, so that's one scenario. Okay, so that's the only scenario where the requirement of tertib is not something that the requirement falls away in that situation. Okay, in fact, not completely, because according to the other group of scholars that say you have to intend face, hands, head, feet, right, there is still that requirement. Okay, although more of a nominal, a nod to it. Okay, the second scenario, for example, Zaid intends ablution. Okay, he makes the intention for wudu, and then at that same time he has 4 people, right, who simultaneously, right, at the same time, they wash his face, his hands, his feet, and his head and his feet. Okay, so these people, there are 4 people washing his face, his hands, his head, and his feet at the same time, as Zaid intends wudu. So what's the ruling in that scenario? Okay, in this scenario, only his face has been validly washed. Okay, because with regards his hands and his head and his feet, these 3 integral limbs, right, have not been washed according to tertib, according to the sequence, because they were all washed at the same time. Okay, so only his face has been the ritual impurity has been removed only from his face. Okay, because the other limbs did not follow in succession. Okay, because they were washed at the same time, simultaneously. Okay, now for example, if Zaid makes the intention, okay, and he washes first his feet, and then his face, and then his head, and then his hands. So what is the ruling of the wudu in this scenario? Okay, so in this scenario, then his face and his hands are valid. Okay, not his feet, which he washed before his face, and not the head, which he washed before the hands, because the order of face, hands, head, and feet is wajib to follow, is according to because of the requirement of tertib, of sequence. and if he washes his feet and then his face and then his head and then his hands, then only the face and the hands are valid. So then he has to continue to wash his head and his feet. Okay. Another scenario is if Zaid makes his intention, yeah, and he washes his face, hands, head and feet simultaneously 4 times. Okay, so four rounds of simultaneously washing the face and hands and head and feet. Okay, so what is the ruling here? Okay, so the ruling is that his wash is now, his wudu, he now has wudu, is complete, right? Because maybe the first wash would have been for his, he would have intended his face, right? The second wash he would have intended his hands, the third wash he would have intended his head, and the fourth wash he would have intended his feet. Okay, so that's assuming he makes intention. Some scholars will say if he does not make the intention, then these are just something that's considered a coincidence, right? That his hands are washed and therefore it's not. So some scholars hold that position, but assuming he does make his intention for wudu, then his wudu, his ablution would then be valid. Okay, it would be sah, right, valid, but makruh, assuming that the water that he uses is his water, right, his belonging, his personal from his personal, at his personal expense. Okay, it would be makruh because of or disliked because of the wasting of the water that's involved in the 4 simultaneous washes. If, for example, he happened to be doing this at the masjid using the mosque's water, then the ruling would be haram, right? So in that scenario, if he were then to go and pray, he would, assuming he prayed a valid prayer, he prayed validly, so that prayer would then be valid but haram. So that's a scenario where his wudu is valid and therefore his prayer is valid but haram. Okay, now if, for example, after Zaid completes his ablution, right, he completes his wudu, then later he finds that there was a bit of paint on his hand, on his left hand. Okay, does he have to go back and begin his ablution from the beginning, from the face again? No. So in this scenario, suddenly after the wudu is completed, he finds that there was something that blocked the wudu, the water from reaching his skin on his left hand. So all he has to do is renew his intention and go back to, or resume his intention for wudu from his left hand, right? After he removes the paint, right, to ensure that water can reach all of the skin, all of the whole hand, yeah, then he just continues from his left hand and then proceeds to his head and his right foot and his left foot. Okay, right leg and left leg. He does not have to begin, right, from the first integral, okay, the face. Another scenario, so for example, now if during ablution, okay, while in the middle of taking his wudu, maybe while washing his feet, for example, Zaid doubts or he forgets whether he's actually washed his left hand. What does he do now in this scenario? Okay, in this scenario, he has to go back to the left hand, right, to remove doubt, right, to get rid of the doubt. So he goes back to washing his left hand and then his head and then his right foot and then his left foot, right leg, left leg, right, and then at the end of that, he is now certain. Okay, he is now certain, in a position of certainty with regards to his wudu. There is no more doubt. Okay, so that is what happens. There's a scenario where if he suffers doubt or forgets in the middle of his wudu. Okay, but after his wudu, right, when it's complete already, right, and he then questions or develops doubts about whether he washed all his limbs, right, what does he do then? Okay, after his wudu, right, which he will have completed with certainty, right, then after that, if doubts suddenly come, oh, did I wash my left hand? Did I wash maybe I forgot my left hand, or maybe I forgot to go a bit over with the elbows. I'm not so sure, Then what happens in that scenario? He ignores his doubt. Okay, he ignores the doubt. Okay, because doubt cannot affect the earlier certainty, right? Doubt does not override certainty. If earlier he was already certain, when he completed his wudu, he would have been certain, because if he had doubt in the middle of his wudu, then he should have gone back to remove that doubt, and washed from where he, from the point at which there was doubt. Right? So by the end of the wash, he would be certain that he was now in a state of ritual purity. So if doubt comes after that, that doubt that comes after that cannot remove that earlier stage, the original state of certainty. Okay, so if doubt comes after the wash, then he is to ignore that doubt. Okay, and in fact, certainty, right, or yaqeen, right, that every limb has been washed is not actually a requirement. Right, it suffices that there be ghalabatul dhann, which is the preponderance, of the possibility. It is more likely the case that it has been washed. Okay, when we're talking about yaqeen, certainty, and dhann, probability. Okay, so there are different levels of certainty, right, when it comes to. There are a few levels of certainty that are involved in fiqhi or shari'i rulings. Okay, with regards to knowledge. Okay, so on one hand there is yaqeen or certainty, so that's 100%, for example. Okay, there's no doubt. Okay, so someone is convinced that he's washed his hand, he has yaqeen, he is certain, that's 100%. Then slightly below that, right, not quite certain, right, not quite beyond doubt completely, but preponderant towards the probability that it is the case. Okay, so to believe that something is probable, so maybe then you are at 70%. Okay, so that is dhann, right? Ghalabatul dhann, maybe 80%. There's a greater preponderance, right, of the probability, right, or possibility. Below that, right, so there's yaqeen, there's ghalabatul dhann, right, where the probability is it's a preponderant probability, it's a strong probability. Okay, then just probability, dhann at 70% maybe, and then there is wahm, right, imagining. Yeah, so this wahm is to imagine something, to consider it possible. Okay, maybe not as strong as probable, but still possible. Okay, so that's maybe about 60%. And then there is shak or doubt, and that's about 50%, 50-50. Okay, so one is at that point, the one is undecided. Okay, so these are the degrees of certainty when it comes to that are relevant, okay, in fiqhi rulings, okay, which will come across again in the coming topics, inshallah. Okay, so in the case of doubts coming to us, right, the waswasah of the shaitan, the devil's whisperings after our wudu we were certain that our wudu is complete and performed validly, right, then we are to ignore the doubt that comes after that, because doubt is a principle. Doubt cannot override certainty, and when we completed the wudu the first time, we were certain. Okay, so these are the few scenarios, right, 5 scenarios or 6 scenarios, right, which I've given you with regards to the wudu and with regards to tartib. So inshallah next week we'll carry on with the remaining, we'll carry on inshallah with the sunnahs and the makruhat, the recommended actions and the disliked actions, right, of the wudu, inshallah. Okay, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, wa na'afu minkum. سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفتوح والنور والرسوخ الصلاح الجسد والروح والتوبة النسوح الفاتحة.
يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول.